Welcome to the space between uncertainty. As we move through 2024, we are being met with more uncertainty than ever before. How do we lean into this energy? How do we transmute fear to crack open another level in our journey? It's when we lean in that we find out who we really are at a deep soul level. Jakob Gricar joins us to discuss his life path of leaning in to find his life open up in unimaginable ways. We dive into how pain, uncertainty, and trust leads us to a life we thought was only possible in our dreams. A true freedom that everyone seeks in this life. Join us as we connect through conversation. Welcome to the space between. My name is Alyson Rixner, and I am so excited to have a new guest to the space between to discuss uncertainty. Jakob, welcome to the space between.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy that you're here. And in full disclosure, this is not our first time doing this, is it?
Yeah, yesterday's conversation was really incredible.
And we had some technical difficulties, and you are a lovely human to come on again and shoot this for take two. But we're going to talk a lot about leaning in to uncertainty and letting go. And that taught me an amazing lesson. And I just wanted to say thank you for being so cool and so amazing about it. I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. And I think it was in a way very divine the way it happened because of the conversation that we've had yesterday and then the technology glitching and not happening in the way that we wanted. And it was just an invitation to lean into, oh, I wonder what's going to come from this.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And for those that are joining, uncertainty might be one of the most important themes in this wild and crazy year that we've been in. And life keeps unfolding, and we are being met with challenge after challenge, aren't we? It has been quite a ride. And I think really just talking about this very deep yet super important topic today, I know that hearts are going to be impacted. And hopefully the listeners will come away with another connection, whether that's to themselves or to the uncertainty that they're facing in their lives. So Jakob, why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your story and your path?
So my path started at about 13 years old. I was dealing with a chronic skin condition, and I remember browsing through my grandma's shelf and I found a book that was talking about medicinal plants. And the last chapter of that book was talking about hypnosis. And I devoured the book. I read that chapter on hypnosis and it just opened up my eyes to maybe I can try to heal my insomnia, which is what I was experiencing at the time because it was so painful to be in my body through making my own hypnosis tapes. And I come from Slovenia. It's a very small country. There's not a lot of knowledge. And at the time, I didn't really have access to the internet. So I went into the library, I bought some books on self-hypnosis, and I started recording my own hypnosis tapes. And as the time went on, I started putting myself to sleep through listening to my own voice. And it just opened up the space of like, what else is possible? So I went into the library, I found more books on meditation. I got into the meditation. I read Bhagavad Gita, the Eastern sacred scripts, started studying Buddhism, and in about 4 months of a rigorous meditation practice, my skin disease went completely away. And what that created for me was actually a lot of anger. A lot of anger came up towards the system and what we don't know and how we're being taught, what we're being taught. So I dropped out of school and I started teaching myself. I went deep into the personal development, Joe Dispenza, Tony Robbins, devoured everything that I could possibly find. Started reading books on psychology to try to understand the power of the mind and how the mind works and how we create these imprints for ourselves. And that led me into eventually realizing that my energy feels too big for what I'm experiencing. So when I was 18 years old, I left Slovenia and I started traveling the world. And of course, that brought in its own adverse circumstances with a lot of uncertainty. And as I put myself out there, I didn't really know what I was looking for. And it was this idea of going for the comfort and then the comfort being totally taken away that pushed me in the spaces of the deepest uncertainty. So I ended up homeless in the streets of France. I ended up working in different hospitality jobs. And I ended up in ashrams in India, meditating with the yogis and learning yoga. And that brought up a really deep sense of I want to understand the depths of my soul. I want to understand the depths of where I'm coming from, what is running me, what is happening in my body, in my life, in my mind, in my emotional landscape. So I packed everything I had and I moved to the Amazon. And for the next 2 years, on and off, I lived with indigenous people. I spent a lot of time in the jungle. And I was working deeply with the plant medicine. I became a plant medicine facilitator, learned their breathwork techniques, learned how they process through the power of different diets, different plants, and eventually made my way to Mexico, where a lot of the integration ended up taking place, where I
Mm.
started moving to away from like this deep ripping apart of my soul and like looking at the depths of myself and more into like what can I actually create and what can I bring into the world. So these last few years have been just that. They've been exploring how I can take these gifts, take this pain, take the depth that I've been able to access and how I can help others get into that spaces by themselves as well.
That's so amazing. What an amazing journey at 13. It is a rare case that somebody has an awakening at that age. And how amazing that you have followed a very unconventional, uncertain path. There doesn't sound like any bit of certainty in the story you just told.
Yeah, and there hasn't been. And I think at some point it becomes such a game and such a play to like lean into these bits of uncertainty, understanding that that's where all the growth comes from. It was like the desire to create something, right? The desire to be in a certain place, to find my community, find my tribe, work through certain things that I was dealing with in a very specific way. But then it seems like life, God, the universe, they just have a very different plan for you. And the more tightly you're holding on to the plan that you have, the harder it's going to be to actually let go and lean into what is meant
Right.
for you, which could be something much bigger than you can ever imagine. But you can't get to that stage if you're still holding on what you have. And my journey has been exactly that. At every stage, at every season that I was going through, it was almost as if the universe was telling me that it has a plan for me that's so much bigger than what I can imagine. And the podcasts that I used to listen to, now I'm hanging out with the people who are recording them, right? I'm in the
Right.
circle of like really big coaches, pioneers of in somatics, like leading group programs, coaching big CEOs one on one. And it's such a beautiful, expansive experience to be able to work in this field. And none of that would have been possible with the vision I had for myself, because the vision I had at every stage was so small that I couldn't see
Mm,
the bigness of how big it could be. So it
yeah.
almost had to be shattered, and my identity had to be shattered with it for that next version to even be possible.
That's so beautiful. And what really started out as a quest for better health, you were very sick at a very young age, opened up something that you had absolutely no idea even existed, right? You found the book and then you were called to other books and you were called to podcasts, much like people that are going to be listening to this. And on a quest for wellness, you found your soul.
Yeah. And I often say that the best entry to spirituality is pain.
Mm,
Oftentimes we don't get to where we need to be until it's either too late in certain cases, right? We don't make those changes unless the pain is big enough. And for a lot of us that are in the spiritual path and the spiritual journey, something really intense, dramatic, drastic has had to happen for us to really push us into like, I need a reality that is different than this. And I see oftentimes first it comes through escape, like trying to numb it and trying to run away from it, trying to run away from the pain. But as you lean into it, as you go through the other side of that portal of pain, it's uncertain. It's unfamiliar, but it's the unfamiliar heaven as opposed to holding on to that familiar head.
oh, that's going to make a great social media clip right there. The unfamiliar, yeah, the familiar how. Talk to us about comfort because uncertainty is The definition, we'll read it, is the state of not knowing for sure what will happen or what is true, a situation where events and outcomes are unpredictable. So when I think about uncertainty or discomfort or whatever those kind of synonyms are, the opposite is comfort, right? And I am someone historically who has sought a lot of comfort to try to control things around me, to try to um, shy away from the pain and shy away from what hurts. It's hurtful, right? So the opposite is comfort. Why do you think as human beings we seek so much comfort? I mean, you've had a very uncomfortable path. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's just the way the brain works. We are in survival spaces, right? We want what's familiar. The brain wants what's familiar. The brain wants what's comfortable. So we create our lives in the way that we're always seeking more comfort. But then the more comfort we seek, the more it becomes, the more we start avoiding what is uncomfortable. So like the more comfortable we are, the more we condition ourselves for that. And the more those little pains and tweaks and triggers, they become so unfamiliar that we try to reject them and we try to avoid them.
Yeah.
And in its essence, when we're avoiding something, when we resist something, it persists, right? So these subtle cues become so much louder. That's why I'm saying sometimes we need to be brought down on our knees before we actually make the change, because we're not listening to these subtle cues. And the discomfort
Right.
doesn't have to be something that happens like a, chronic skin condition, chronic disease like I used to have, or severe depression like I used to have as well, or certain traumatic things or like traumatic events. It can also be just subtle listening to where am I not, what is happening for me right now, and where am I not free? Where am I trying to avoid an uncomfortable feeling or sensation or emotion? And as we dive into what we're trying to avoid, the freedom is on the other side of that. But when we're trying to push it away and we're trying to numb it so that we can have more comfort and certainty, then those things become louder and they become louder. And suddenly these whispers turn into screams. And it just becomes something that we cannot ignore anymore, right? So the more tightly we hold on to discomfort, the more tightly we hold on to things that are familiar, the more it's going to be painful when they get ripped away from us.
Absolutely. And I'm going through something. We're recording this the end of October 2024. And I unlocked another level of pain and another level of discomfort. And there wasn't one thing for me that I didn't get brought to my knees, but it's been a journey of, I'd probably say 10 or 12 years to get to the point where, even a few months ago, I'm like, oh boy, I've dealt with this. This is over. And then whew, here comes another situation. And the deepness, right? The cavern of what we are here to learn and what we are here to, I don't know if overcome's the right word, but move through, if that's the right way, is not easy, but it's such a part of the human experience. I believe this is a big reason that we're here, to feel this and move through it and come to a different place where we can actually find peace.
Yeah, and it's not in the numbing and it's not in the pushing away. It's absolutely in taking all of the human experience in all its depth and seeing how to unlock the next level of where you want to be and where you need to be. You really need to inevitably let go of everything that you thought you were. And this deep shedding of the past versions of ourselves become the process where the more we're able to lean into faith, knowing that everything is working out for us and in the deepest service of who we're meant to be, then we can start like actually letting go.
That's so beautiful. I actually felt that when you said that. I was like, oh, I was right there with you because I was in therapy for a very long time, and I would always say, "Oh, when I get to the next me or the next," but a therapist cognitively isn't really going to understand that. But when you think of it in your spiritual journey, there are so many different versions of us, right? Everything's happening all at once, and as we move through the challenges and the highs and the lows and everything in between our life, that is it. That's living. And I think for so long for me, I thought living was the fun shit, right? Going on vacation and buying clothes and all of the things that I was using to dissociate from how I really felt, or my purpose, or the reason I came back, or the challenges that I set myself up to overcome, right? And once all of that kind of happened over COVID for me. Like 2019, 2020, I was kind of just like and then we couldn't go anywhere and we couldn't do anything. And I'm like, what is all of that I'm doing? And we were forced to sit with ourselves in a different way. And then you're met with your shadow, which I had been met with a few times before, but it was a big one. And it was like, listen, bitch, we're going to deal with this now. There is no more running and there is no more hiding. And I think a lot of people, either in the past few years or currently, are dealing with that.
Yeah, that's the most beautiful thing in my opinion. It's like when life forces you into really deeply feeling it all. Because, for example, right now I'm going through a very deep grieving process, and I'm here in a little house with my mentor. She's 82 years old, and it's just her and I in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina. And it's really noticing the spaces where previous versions of me would have tried to run away from the depths of how much I'm feeling. Yet right now, in the stage of evolution where I'm at right now, I'm just like, bring it on. Like, bring it on, bring more pain. Let me feel all of this. Let me feel all of this for all the times that I haven't felt it previously. All the grief that I've been pushing away, that I went on dating apps instead, and went traveling instead, and went out with my friends instead. All the places where I was doing all these things to numb, including going for psychedelics, including doing breathwork sessions, including the healthier versions, let's say, of,
Right, right.
including going for more personal development and like reaching out for another course or another therapy or calling out my friends. Like, no, let's drop all of that and let's just freaking sit with the discomfort. Let's just sit with whatever comes up, and like, let's see these like sticky, icky parts of us, and just like, oh, once it's felt all the way through, then you get to liberate yourself completely. And when I speak about the previous versions of you and like that next level version, I almost imagine it as art. And if you're an artist and you're drawing a painting, you're not going to get attached to that painting. You're not going to be like, oh yeah, that's painting, that's the painting, that's my painting, and that's all that my painting as a verb is. You're going to sign off that painting and you're going to get to the new one. And that's the space of uncertainty where you don't know what that next painting, what that next piece of art is going to be, but you've signed off on the last version of that art. And that last version was the complete, fullest, perfect expression of who you were in the time.
Yeah.
But let's sign that off. It's time for the new one. And the same when we experience a loss, for example, a loss of the relationship, is just such deep attachment and so much pain when that is gone. And yet that is the version of us that we no longer are. So sometimes the deep feelings of grief are where the lessons are of who we can become. And it offers a choice. Either you wallow in the grief, either you wallow in the pain, you wallow in the sorrow, you wallow in these old versions of yourself because of the attachment to the comfort that you used to have, or you just choose to embrace it. I do not know what is going to happen now, yet I call it in. I bring it in. Let's bring it more uncertainty. Let's bring in all of the stuff that we don't yet know, but it's going to be so much more beautiful and so much more alive.
That's so beautiful. And I think, I definitely want to talk to you a bit about the somatic work that you do. And we'll talk about your program a little bit later in your work in our conversation today. But so many people, I think even people listening to this podcast, are going to think about how does that feel cognitively, right? And your work combines both. But also, I feel like as time marches on and we get deeper into this new energy, and so many people are on the path, it's like this amazing enlightenment that's happening. When that clicked for me, and I realized everything I had ever been through, both in this life, past lives, was in my body. That was a massive, massive lesson, because once you connect to your heart and you get out of your head, you're doing that through the body. And would you agree that's the portal?
Yeah, the body is the portal, the pain is the portal. And when you say trying to understand it cognitively, I've had people come into my sessions, and after the session, they're like, I have processed something I have not been able to process in 15 years of therapy. And that's because the therapy works at the level of the mind, and it's trying to trying to rationalize things, trying to open them up, talk about it, and it's all at the level of the mind. It's the understanding of the mind. But the body has so much more wisdom, and the nervous system actually stores majority of where your traumatic imprints are. So something that has happened to you in the past, if that is stored in your body and in your nervous system, then your mind doesn't know the difference where it is. It just imprints it into like right now. And when you keep re-experiencing that over and over again, it doesn't ever get really properly healed. So all these bits of pain, when the uncertainty is coming up, when there's like the opportunity to go into the spaces of discomfort, that's oftentimes where we're able to unlock that part that we've been holding on through the level of the body. Yeah. And if you, in those moments where these energies are arising for you and you're feeling discomfort, even like heartbreak, it's actually feels like a heartbreak. It feels like your heart is being ripped out of your chest for quite a lot of people. And there's often a experience in the stomach, experience in the throat. And if we just try to numb these uncomfortable sensations and then talk it out with someone, even with a therapist, it's just not going to work. Because the portal to that next level version of you is through the sensations, it's through the body. Can you actually be with the sensation that is there? And oftentimes when we get into the pain, we realize that it's not really a pain, it's just sensation. And it just carries information. The darkness, when you go into the storm, when you run into the storm and instead of running away from it, there's all the information in there.
Yeah, and I'll share something that happened to me a few weeks ago. I had one of those days where I was just riddled with self-doubt and poor self-talk, and it started out as a very cognitive experience. Literally everything I was doing throughout my day, I was questioning. Why are you doing this? What makes you think you have the authority to speak on that? What are you doing? Just this whole, and it was very strange. It wasn't just like the morning or the afternoon. It was literally every single thing I did that day. And I got home and I had a total breakdown. And what was interesting, because I've done so much work and I can connect to my body, and it's a practice, right? Just like anything else, I felt that pain of me, the shame of how I felt about myself, the fact that I didn't let anybody help me. There was so many deep-seated things, and it felt like it was a mile deep in my chest cavity, and it was actual pain. And I had never felt anything so deep in my body before. And I was like, holy shit, this is going to unlock something new because this is so freaking deep.
And that's the way to look at it. This is going to unlock something new. And the curiosity about it is like, wow, I'm curious what's going to come through this. What's going to come through this pain? What is going to come through this discomfort? What is going to come through this? And I think this is where majority of the people turn to drugs, turn to substances, turn to alcohol, turn to porn, turn to watching, binging Netflix and like scrolling on social media. It's like anything that can take us away from that discomfort. We want to do that, right? And instead, if we actually like turn towards it, go through it, look at it, be in it, and that's what the human experience is about. Because what you learn through being put in the washing machine, into the roller coaster, into that like tornado, right?
Washing machine's great, by the way.
Yeah, what comes out on the other side is such a more potent, informed, powerful version of you. But you cannot get there at the level of the mind. No. You cannot think your way into being that next level version of you. That needs to come through life carving you, life literally ripping you open, ripping you apart and ripping you open, and like letting those parts create the new depth inside of you. I've learned that for myself as well. I've had a lot of adverse experiences in my life, but there was levels of depths that I couldn't access. And I've only been able to access them through like a lot of loss and a lot of traumatic experiences. So in order to be actually the version of me that I am right now, that's able to be so efficient and powerful with people, I had to get to those depths of me. And as I look back at them, I look at them, those things were the best thing that could have ever happened to me, right? Because because they allowed me to be who I am today, so that I can be in the space where I can deal with grief, for example, with so much peace and so much poise. But that was not something that was accessible for me a few years ago. And I had to have those carving, tough, dark experiences to be able to go through that. And also the way I coach people, the way I work with people, the way I lead even group sessions, all of that is only accessible because I've accessed that depth inside of me first. And here's where a really interesting twist happens is oftentimes at the end of these sessions, we come to the conclusion where people realize, wow, okay, this traumatic experience that I've gone through is the best thing that could have ever happened to me. It's the best thing that could have ever happened to me because I am where I am right now. And that is really, really beautiful. Yeah. But the catch here of playing the game at a totally different level is, can you realize that once it's happening in the moment, when you're actually in it, instead of looking back 10 years later and being like, okay, this traumatic experience was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. What if you look at it right now? This loss that I'm going through, this traumatic experience that I'm going through right now, this intense emotional roller coaster, the loss of a job or a partner or a loved one or a parent or whatever it is, just like my life being ripped apart. What if this is the best thing that could ever happen to you? So don't wait 10 years to look back and be like looking at all the lessons and the patterns of seeing how you could, how you got to where you're at right now. What if you look at it in the moment as it's happening? I wonder, I'm so curious, what is coming out of this? Who do I get to become? How do I get to show up? What do I get to learn? How can I use this pain to be in service of more people, to touch more hearts, to create bigger impact? And this is where you're really starting to play a game on a different level, because it's no longer about you anymore. It's no longer about your attachments. It's no longer about holding on to that comfort and I just want my life to be easy. No. Yeah. No, this is not even about you. Let go of the life looking easy. Let go of that comfort and lean into what is on the other side of that discomfort and that uncertainty, because this is where you get to be who you're meant to be and create the impact that you want to create.
That's so beautiful. And I want to talk about the service piece for sure. But something with what you were saying came up for me. And you talked about game. So now game is a word that could be used in a lot of different contexts. But the way that we're using a game, and follow me here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. When we chose to come back, because I believe that we chose this experience, I believe we had like a choose your own adventure, right? Your soul is coming back to Earth school, Earth plane, third dimensional existence to continue to learn and grow, which we've already discussed doesn't happen when shit is sweet. It happens when things are tough and you're leaning into uncertainty and your life is giving you one thing after another. Where did we get that so wrong? You mentioned the kind of cognitive piece of it, right? I want to talk to you a little bit about like the external world. You know, obviously, if we were just chilling and sitting in our bodies and sitting in our essence and all of these things, it would be easier to get to next levels, right? Because you would be more in tune with yourself. But we live in the world where there's all these external influences that will impress upon you. So, for example, I know part of my breakdown was that my business was going through a really tough time. One of my businesses is based in Florida and they had the horrible hurricanes. Right. So it was one of those things where I had internal doubts and then I had external shit that was just causing like this massive storm for me. But it is a game. And if you can untether from all of it, that's where you can be a player in your own game, because we are creating our own movie. That's what this is all about. Right.
Yeah. And you choose the game that you want to play. Yep. So if you want to play the material game and play the game of like, how much money can I make, or how I can create bigger businesses and create successful businesses and more of them and whatever. That's playing a game on a very superficial level. Yeah. Playing a game on a deeper level is like, what happens when that goes wrong? Playing a game of relationship is playing a game of like, how can we be the most beautiful aligned couple, right? How can we complement each other? How can we learn to communicate? How can we be better at meeting each other's needs? And that game is great. but you're still playing a superficial game. The more deeper game of your soul is what happens when we start playing out these different dynamics that are no longer aligned and no longer in service. Can we actually look at healing that within ourselves and in our soul, and not play that game on just like a superficial level? So you get to choose which game you want to play, and you get to keep whatever you fight for, right? So you get to keep your excuses if you fight for your excuses. You get to keep your grief if you fight for your grief. If people are coming to you and you're telling you, oh, I'm so sorry that you lost your business in Florida, and you're going to be like, oh, yes, I feel so hurt, and so many things have happened. And you choose to play the game of playing the victim, and you just also get to keep what you're fighting for, and you're fighting for being the victim in that case. But if you are the way I'm seeing you doing it as well, look at it from the deeper level, and you're like, okay, this is the uncertainty now. This is life telling me that there's a bigger plan for me. And that bigger plan doesn't mean that you're going to now start a bigger business. That bigger plan could be an energetic thing, right? So how can I energetically grow through this so that the capacity of my soul becomes much bigger, the capacity of my nervous system, my ability to be in bliss? Because money comes and money goes, relationships come and relationships go. But if you can follow your bliss, if you can follow your passion, if you can follow where you need to be in the level of your growth, and you choose to play the game at the levels of, I wonder who I can become in the process, not what I'm creating. It's not about how much money you make. It's about who you become in the process of making it. And that's why I love making money. And I love creating my businesses as well. And I love watching them grow, right? But it's not about the business itself. It's about who I'm becoming in the process. Because I know from one day to the other, the business can be taken away. Like whatever can happen, right?
Yeah,
The
there's
same
so
in a
much.
relationship. You put so much energy and time and effort into making that relationship as good as it can be. And then the next day it's gone.
Boom.
It can happen thousands of different ways, and it's just
Yeah.
going to be gone. But who have you become in the process of like making that relationship great? Who have you become in the process of making a lot of money? Who have you become in the process of making a big business? And this is where you get to see, are you playing the game of alignment or not? Because a lot of people make a lot of money in ways that are not coming from the ways of integrity, right? So
Yes.
who they are becoming in the process is a very different game than when you're playing like, how can I impact the most people? How can I like touch most hearts? How can I like be the most in service? And one of my programs, which we're gonna mention later as well, was built on that. It was like, we do not care about how much money we make. We just wanted to be on service, and we were like, how can we create a place where we have everyone's back, where we're there 24/7 for them, where we got them, where we're like actually dedicated and committed to their growth. And we did that, and it just exploded. So this is where it's more so about leaning into the space of unknown, but doing your best to be the best version of yourself. And even when all these dense, dark emotions come and you lose your business in Florida or whatever happens, you lose your relationship, there's still that space of like, okay, the game right now, it's not the game to see how resilient I am and like try to pull it back up and like do this. And maybe that is the game, right? As well. But maybe the game is for you to just be with those uncomfortable emotions. And maybe the business is just mirroring what happened to you when you were a child, and something that you didn't allow yourself to feel when it was still subtle, and it just had to become so big that you couldn't ignore it anymore. I know that there was a big void in my chest, and I tried to fill that void and that emptiness that I felt inside of me with travel, with experiences, with personal development, with relationships. Um, Even with creating impact. All of that was to some degree to just feel that emptiness that I felt inside of me.
Right.
So when everything started falling apart and being ripped out of my grip, what I had to learn was like, it's not about trying to hold on. It's not about these attachments. It's not about how things look. It's about me meeting that deep part of myself that was never felt, that was never met, giving myself that love that I've never gotten, giving myself that purity, that space where I can feel that space inside of myself and then create from that space instead.
Right.
So all of those losing of things had to happen as a catalyst for me to be able to so deeply see myself.
I love that so much. And a lot of what I talk about on the podcast is the crumbling of who we were of what's happening around us. And in those moments, don't shy away. If there's one thing that anyone could take away from this conversation is do not play the victim, lean into it. See what you find.
And learn to let go.
Yeah.
Learn to let go, because the tighter you're gripping, the more painful it's going to be.
Yeah.
And when we choose our attachments instead of unconditional love, that's where the pain starts. So the love doesn't go away, but the attachments do. And the creation of the business does not go away. Like, all that creative energy just changes shape. Are you able to just sign off that version of that picture and start creating the new one, right? What's the
Right.
next piece of art that comes from the place of creativity, love, awareness? Can you actually let go of that old version of art? Just drop it. Don't be so attached to it.
It's so beautiful. I love this art example. This is going to stick with me forever. Thank you so much. I'm just like, I'm looking behind here because I have this amazing painting in my living room. And I think about just the layers and all the different colors and how it all comes together. And that's life. That's what we're doing. We're layering and learning and unlearning and loving and fear and all of it. And this is the dance. So, talk to us a little bit more about your offerings and some of the programs that you have.
Absolutely. Um, where I have been seeing myself being in the place where I'm serving the best recently has been group coaching and group somatics. And it's actually something that I was reflecting on. I've never seen done before. Because I've seen one-on-one somatic sessions, and I've been in this space for a while. I've been taking people through one-on-one sessions, and I've seen a lot of group processes happen in live situations in different retreats. However, what I've never seen is the program that integrates it to this depth and capacity than what we've been able to create and curate. And the program, we call it Metamorphosis. And it's divided into two parts. The first part is more the traditional coaching, where it's following certain steps to really clear and purify your life, starting with building the really strong foundation so you can be strong and grounded as we're opening and unraveling these deeper parts of ourselves, and then going into the clearing of the spaces, clearing of the conversations, clearing of any toxicities in our life, and eventually coming into the space of creation and birthing something that is powerful for the world, that is coming from the place where we're feeling full within ourselves. And then the other layer of this is we're bringing somatics. So we really heavily emphasize the purpose of working through the body and through the nervous system, because cognitively and taking action can take us really far, but we really need to face these deep aspects of ourselves as well. And there's a lot of beauty in the group container as well, because as one person is going through the process, we recognize this shared humanity. We recognize that these pains that we're experiencing are actually not something to be ashamed about. They're not something that is unique to us. Almost all of the deepest fears and secrets that you carry, I promise you, majority of the people do. The things that you think that are most personal to you are the most universal ones. So when we're going through the process of somatics, we really open up the possibility of seeing each other in our shared humanity, but also starting this process of healing on the level that's so much deeper than just cognitively, more deeper than just taking action. And the way these two parts integrate between each other is so profound, because it's not just big insights and big aha moments, but it's also taking real world action, and at the same time coming back into the space of like processing these triggers from taking the real world action, and like taking them into the level deeper and like unraveling and uncovering everything that's there.
Yeah, and there's a lot of folks that listen to the podcast that have been through spiritual programs, myself included. And one of the things that I just think is so different and so needed is the fact that you are paying so much attention to the integration. And you said that, right? Once you come out of your meditation or once you come out of your experience or whatever it is, you are going to be faced with your life again. you are going to have to walk through your front door and go to work or deal with your relationships or deal with your money issues or whatever it is. I would say this is one of the things that's so exciting about this new energy and a younger generation like yourself coming in and having a very different way of looking at this work, because there's a lot of trauma that has been caused in the spiritual community. I have dealt with that myself. I had a horrible experience that happened to me with a coach. And I love how you're looking at it. I mean, holistically is like an old word, right? There's probably something new that we could say. But the integration in the real world is so different. And thank you for doing that.
Yeah. And when you're speaking about being traumatized by these experiences, I have seen it. I promise you, I have seen so much. I spent 2 years seeing hundreds of different processes, hundreds of different ceremonies. I've facilitated dozens of plant medicine ceremonies. I've seen countless retreats, and all these epiphanies, all these beautiful moments are incredible, and they're so incredible to watch. But if your life doesn't change, then it's really just not worth it. Then you're just going for another high and chasing another experience, and your life might actually end up worse than it did before, because now you have all this new awareness of some part of yourself, but you don't know what to do with it, and you're stuck in the same patterns, going through the same loops, going through the same cycles, but now with this new awareness where it's like, I just don't know what to do with it. So that's where actually the personal development happening through the process of like taking action is so much more important. So much more important than just taking psychedelics and having a spiritual experience.
Right. You can't live in a ceremony. I mean, I guess some people do. I don't know. No, that wouldn't be for me. But it's I'm so glad that, we came to this point in the conversation, because we are all about like self-empowerment on the space between and being discerning and understanding your energy. You will know inherently when something you're doing energetically, spiritually, somatically is not right. Trust that. Trust that. I can vouch for Jakob's program. We're going to link it below. But there are a lot of people out there that should not be doing what they're doing. And the masks are coming off. Everyone is being seen, right? There's no more hiding. And a lot of people that you thought you trusted, their real self is coming through. And that's a big part of the energy that we're in right now as a collective. Big, big, big.
Yeah, it's the process of unmasking. And it's such a beautiful process because there's nowhere else to hide. I think I said it yesterday on the
for better or for worse.
Yeah. There's the good thing about telling the truth is that you don't have to remember all the lies, right?
Right.
And when all the masks start falling off, how much more energy is available to you? It's just so beautiful when you're holding on to the attachments, holding on to anything, holding on to your masks, holding on to the lies, holding on to anything that is untrue. You can always come back to the space of like your heart and like your authenticity and your integrity and be like, when you move from that space, it's just so much easier. Things flow, things happen. You know where you're meant to be. You don't have to push and strive to make something work that isn't. You just go into the space of like, oh, I know where my heart is. God knows where my heart is. And I choose to move in this direction, right? And all the unmasking that is happening, I think it's so beautiful because majority of the people don't even know the masks that they have. So then
totally. Until it's hit, you're like, that's me.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And then you go like this.
No. Yeah. And it's such a beautiful process. And you have to look at that. That's when you do have to look at the mirror and just be like, wow, this is who I have been. This is what I have done. And that process is so uncomfortable that for majority of the people, it's again easier to put on another mask. But the beauty is like actually looking at the mirror and being like, oh, I see who I have been. I see how I have shown up. And I choose to not do that anymore. At any point, you can change who you are. And that's the beautiful thing about human experience. Don't let what other people think of you dictate who you are. You can always surprise people with another plot twist. It's your life. You get to make your own rules, right?
Yep, it's our movie.
Yeah.
We're directing and starring.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And something that came up for me when you were saying that, I was thinking of metamorphosis, and the uncertainty and the discomfort is the caterpillar. If you've ever seen a picture of a caterpillar at the end stage, I guess, is it a cocoon? I think it's a cocoon, right? When it's like growing and it's like it's just so it looks incredibly painful. Is that one of the what is the reason for choosing metamorphosis? I don't think I asked you that yesterday. I mean, it's perfect, but how did that happen?
Yeah, I think it's the chrysalis what you're referring to.
The
Um,
chrysalis, yes.
yeah, what we've actually used as a metaphor is not so much of a butterfly, even though that's something
Okay.
that often comes up for me
Right,
when
okay.
I imagine metamorphosis, but it was the oak tree. So
Oh,
having the
yeah.
seed and how the seed needs the soil, it needs the healthy soil. And that little seed carries all the information and all the DNA to become a really big ecosystem, not just a tree, but it becomes a whole ecosystem. So that little seed, when we put it in the ground, when we water it, when we make sure that the soil is healthy, when it's got enough sunshine, it's got the right environment around it, then it starts growing, it starts sprouting. And this is the basis of the program, is building a strong foundation, watering the roots, right? Actually building that foundation so strong and so healthy that we get to grow from this. And what comes out of it is not the fruits that are for us, they're fruits that are for the ecosystem.
Mm,
The fruit does not belong to the tree, the fruit belongs to the ecosystem. So as we're watering the roots, not chasing the fruits, we come from this space of purity, of integrity. We're here for life. We're here for growth. And whatever happens in the process is all in service of life. Even the pain, even the darkness, even the uncertainty, all the aspects, they become the things that we need in order to create that ecosystem.
oh, that's so beautiful. I forgot about the oak tree from yesterday. That's unbelievable. What an amazing visualization of what it is that we're talking about. Thank you for that. And, that could be a whole other podcast about service. What do you do once you um, come home to yourself and you face so many shadows and you go deeper? You begin to find out why you're here. You begin to remember who you really are
Yeah,
on the other side, right?
and it's the moments of uncertainty, of not knowing what that will look like, that I think create the space where you can lean into who you're meant to be, not who you thought you're going to be. It's the question that we get asked when we're growing up. What do you want to be when you grow up, right?
Right.
But that question should change every year, every 2 years, every time you're going through a different season and a different transition. That question should be different. If you ask me
Right.
who I thought
Absolutely.
if you ask me who I thought I'm going to be a year ago or something like that, I would have given you a very different answer. But the life carved me, scaffolded me, unfolded in the ways that I could not even imagine before. And now the vision is so much greater. But it's not still, again, about the attachment to the vision. It's about who I become in the process for going towards that vision. And then the life might change another course, right? Because of who I'm becoming in the process might be much bigger from the vision that I had. So at some point it might just like switch paths and I'm going to be, no, but I wanted it to look that
Right.
way.
No. Oh God, if I've been living in that, that's so true. Um, and I think that that's a great place to kind of pause our conversation. I feel like we have done such an amazing job of threading what comes from uncertainty, why we feel, how we feel. And I always love to end this on hopes for the future. So, people are being faced with some of the toughest things in their lives right now. Everyone's tired. It's been a rough couple years on planet Earth. What is your hope for the future now that people are really facing uncertainty? What do you hope with all of this? What do you hope comes from it?
Now that you worded it in the way where you said, and people are tired, what comes up for me as you ask that question is, what happens as we lean into the tiredness? When we just let the ego drop, when we drop off these masks and we fall down on our knees and we're like, I'm just freaking exhausted. That's where the surrender happens. And my hope, my desire for what could potentially unfold is just this deep level of surrender. Let's surrender to what is coming up. Let's surrender what is existing, and not be in this space of needing to hold on how things look like, our attachments, our opinions, this division that is being created, all the masks that are being held. What if we just surrender past this point of discomfort, past this point of like needing to push? Because you get tired when you're holding on. You don't get tired when you flow. If you're flowing with the stream of the river, you can relax and you can enjoy. But when you're swimming upstream, that's when you really get tired. And sometimes you need to get so tired that you're like, I can't swim anymore, so that you realize that all you need to do is just let go and let the river take you. So when we get, and what's coming up as you ask that question in the space of just my imagination, is just seeing that moment after a really tough workout where you have so much satisfaction and you're so proud for what you've done, and yet you're like surrendering into that, and you're like, okay, I've done it. I've done this part. Like, it doesn't mean that it's over, but like I can take a deep breath out. I can like allow myself to be who I am. I can drop my ego. I can be messy and sweaty and just let myself breathe heavily. And then I know we're going to go again, because that's just how it rolls. So I don't like the word hope, because of the energy that it has. It has the energy of like wanting it to be a certain way.
It does. It's a yearning word. I like that. I'm going to change that question from now on, because you're absolutely right.
Where I like to go with this is the word trust. So I trust that what's going to happen in the future is more stepping into the space of surrender, more stepping into the place of unmasking, taking off all of these masks and like loosening the grip on the attachments and just letting go. Let life unravel the way it is, while still seeing, how can I grow from this? How can I experience more of myself? How can I get to that next level and not hold on so tightly to what used to be?
That's so beautiful. Oh my God, Jakob, I'm so glad you agreed to go on the podcast. This has been so amazing. Thank you so much. Not once, but twice. And this was, by the way, a totally different conversation.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the spontaneity.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, how can people connect with you? We'll link it below, but how can people find out more about you and your work and all the amazing things that you have to offer the world with your gifts?
We're going to pop some links below this episode. And for right now, we're a bit in the space in between. We've just launched one of the cohorts of Metamorphosis, and the next one will be launching around March. Okay. We still haven't fully decided on the dates. I have paused a lot of other programs that I'm doing, and I'm open to taking one or two more one-on-ones. So the best way to get in touch with me would be to just reach out. Don't be a stranger. Go on my Instagram account and send me a message, and let's start a conversation. Because even if I cannot support you in the place where I'm at right now or where you're at right now, I can probably refer you to someone, or we can just have a conversation and get to know each other. So feel free to reach out, whoever is listening to this.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'm so excited for what the rest of this year and the beginning of the next calendar year holds for you. I cannot wait to watch how this continues to grow and unfold. It's just so beautiful. And I'm just so happy that I know you now. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Alyson. It's been so beautiful connecting with you.
Absolutely. And to all the listeners, thank you so much for joining Jakob and I in the space between. We're sending everybody a lot of love, and we will see you very soon. Thank you so much for joining us in the space between. We hope this conversation sparked connection for you. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who will find value. And make sure to tune into our next episode as we continue the journey into the core themes of our lives. We'll see you again in the space between.